I know this is going to sound insane. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I'm asking if anyone else has experienced this. For years, I've kept this almost completely to myself because every time I tried to explain it, it sounded crazy. I told myself I was just getting older. I told myself it was ADHD. I told myself it was anxiety. I tried to explain it every way I possibly could, but nothing ever actually explained the feeling. Ever since I was a kid, I've noticed that every few years, something changes. Not my personality, not my interests, the way I experience reality itself. The closest thing I can compare it to is a radio. Imagine reality is always broadcasting on one station, but every few years your brain gets retuned just a tiny bit. Reality doesn't necessarily change, but your perception of it does. I feel there's no vocabulary for what I'm trying to explain. For the last 4 years, my brain has felt like it's been running a million miles an hour. I have ADHD, so my mind has always been fast, but this felt different. It wasn't just racing thoughts. It felt like the entire pace of existence sped up. Days disappeared. Weeks disappeared. Months disappeared. It felt like life was permanently stuck on fast forward. Every morning I'd wake up and something just felt off. Not emotionally, not physically. Outside, the world itself didn't feel like it used to. The sunlight didn't feel the same. People always assume I'm talking about temperature. I'm not. I'm talking about the feeling of sunlight. When I was younger, standing outside felt warm in a way that's hard to explain. The sun almost wrapped around your skin. It had this soft warmth that felt comforting. For years now, that feeling has been gone. The sun has felt harsher. The days have felt rushed. Even the colors seemed different to me. Then something happened a few days ago. I walked outside like I always do. Within seconds, I literally stopped walking. Everything felt exactly like I remembered from years ago. The sunlight, the warmth, the pace of the day, even time itself felt slower. Not slower on a clock, slower inside my own experience. For the first time in years, I wasn't mentally sprinting through the day. It felt like I had somehow stepped back into the world I remembered growing up in. Then I started hearing insects, cicadas, grasshoppers, the normal daytime sounds of nature. Now, I know insects come and go seasonally. I'm not saying bugs prove anything. I'm saying they became part of a much bigger feeling that hit me all at once. It reminded me of when I first moved to Las Vegas. Back then, everything still felt normal. I even remember the huge grasshopper invasion years ago, where there were thousands of them covering everything. Then after that period, it felt like nature itself became strangely quiet. For years, I barely noticed those sounds anymore. Maybe that's coincidence. Maybe it isn't. What matters is that all of these things hit me before I ever searched anything online. After experiencing this, I went to Google. I wasn't searching for CERN. I searched things like, why does outside feel different? Why does the sun feel different? Why do the days feel faster? I was looking for anyone to describe the feeling I'd been having. Eventually that rabbit hole led me to CERN and the Large Hadron Collider. Then I looked at the dates. That's where things started getting weird. I noticed that several major shifts in how I remember experiencing life seemed to line up with periods when the collider was operating, restarting, or changing phases. Now before everyone says confirmation bias, maybe, seriously, maybe, I'm completely open to that possibility. But here's what keeps bothering me. I noticed the feeling first. The dates came later. I wasn't trying to force the dates to fit. I was trying to understand why I suddenly felt like my old self again. Then I realized something else. Ever since I was young, these huge shifts seem to happen every 4 years. Not every 7, not randomly. Roughly every 4 years. Which is strange, because people always say your body replaces most of its cells over about 7 years. If this were simply my body changing naturally, why do I keep noticing these dramatic perception shifts on what feels like a 4-year cycle instead? That's the part I can't stop thinking about. Here's where my theory starts. I'm not saying CERN is opening portals. I'm not saying we're jumping timelines. I'm not saying reality itself changes. What if reality stays exactly the same and something changes the way human consciousness experiences it? What if the Mandela effect isn't objects changing? What if people aren't remembering a different reality? What if millions of people had their perception shifted in a similar way? Imagine every human brain is like a radio receiver. Reality is the broadcast. If every receiver got tuned slightly differently, everyone would still agree with everyone else because they're all listening through the same adjusted receiver. Reality wouldn't have changed. We would have. That idea sounds crazy. I know it does, but honestly, it sounds less crazy to me than pretending I haven't spent years feeling like the world itself changed. I'm not claiming this is true. I have no proof. This is speculation. I'm simply trying to make sense of something I've experienced for years. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe there's a neurological explanation. Maybe it's environmental. Maybe it's psychological. Maybe it's something we've never considered. I don't know. All I know is this. A few days ago, I walked outside, and for the first time in years, the world felt like home again. Has anyone else ever experienced anything even remotely similar?